Hey y'all, it's Sabrina, and in this week's video, I'm going to be talking to you about pros and cons of working on a cruise ship. So I spent about a year working on ships, and I worked 2 different companies, and I absolutely loved it, but like any job, there are pros and cons to working on cruise ships. So 2 things you need to know with this video. The very first thing is your pros and cons are going to differ depending on the company you're working for, the specific ship that you are on within that company, and your specific job that you do on the ships. The second thing you need to know is obviously my pros and cons are not always yours. What I think is a pro may be a con to you and vice versa. This video is just set up to help you think about some things that maybe you haven't considered yet or talk about some things that you don't know about. So with this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 different points and talking about the pros and cons to each of them. So like always, there are timestamps down in the description below. So let's get started. Category number 1 is travel. So let's get into the pros first. Obviously, the biggest pro when it comes to traveling is you're essentially traveling for free. When you get your contract, your company is going to pay to fly you out to the ship. They're going to pay for a hotel for you to stay overnight if you're boarding the ship the following day, and they're going to fly you home when your contract is all over. The main necessities that you pay for when you travel, such as room and board and food, is all covered for you when you are living and working on the ship. You don't have to worry about any of it. Along with those pros is that because you are working on the ship for 6, 7, 8 months at a time, you get to see, visit, and explore these different places, these different ports, for more than just the one day for 7 hours like the passengers and the guests on board do. You actually get to see it one day, head somewhere else, and you're back in the same port the following week. You really get to know and love a place. Not only did me and my friends have our go-to places, those local restaurants that we always went to and ate that kind of became our own, but we got to go down different streets, meet different people, see new things, and get our fill of that country or location that we were in. Along with that, depending on what your company offers its workers and what your work schedule may be, there's a possibility that you'll get to do certain tours and certain activities for free. I've been on walking tours of Estonia or riverboat cruises in Russia or hiking in Jamaica because I work on the ship and had the time and opportunity to participate in the tours that the guests do. You may have to do a little bit of work when you are on these tours, like assisting the tour guides or giving information to the passengers, but you still get to participate in these activities at no cost to you. Now, a con I would say when it comes to traveling and working on cruise ships is there were a lot of times where I felt like I had to ask myself, am I really traveling? And by that, I mean a lot of ships, they stay in the Caribbean, private islands, or at the Bahamas where it was mostly beach and snorkeling. And yes, that's awesome and that sounds great, but you're kind of far away from civilization. Or maybe you are going to the same port over and over and over again. Those ports are set up for tourists. So you're not really getting to meet the locals or really immerse yourself in the culture or go deep into the country because you are at the places, again, that are set up for tourists. And if you're only docked there for a day, you might not have time to really get to know and explore a place or a city or a country because you're only at that port of call. No, not every contract is like this. They're all very different. But when you're doing a contract that's 6 months in the Bahamas, just on the island over and over and over again, you can get impatient and it can also get kind of frustrating. You don't really want to wait to go explore and travel and venture. Along with that, it seems impossible. And before I joined ships, one of the things that I was told is you're going to get sick of the ports that you go to and visit. And you may not want to get off the ship. And I thought people were absolutely crazy. I was like, there's no way I'm not going to want to get off the ship and see new places. But the honest truth is that you will get tired of the ports of call that you go to. There were days where I just didn't get off the ship. I stayed in my room and slept because I was tired and I had been to that port several times. I just didn't need to get off and check it out again. So I was just kind of waiting until the month was over until we went to a new port of call. And if you're currently on a contract where you've been to that port of call several times and you've pretty much felt like you've done everything, you may find yourself on the ship more than you are traveling. Category number 2 is room and board. So right off the bat, obviously the pro of room and board is that everything is paid for. Your room is paid for. You don't have to worry about your rent. You don't have to worry about your grocery shopping because you get your 3 meals a day and snacks when you need it. You don't have to worry about your utility bills because you have a bathroom in your room and you can shower without paying a water bill. Pretty much everything is covered for you. Now, what's more with that is depending on what your role is, what your job is on the ship, you may have access to what the passengers eat. That means you're getting to basically consume all these amazing foods all of the time or for so many hours throughout your day. It's definitely a great perk and you're going to save money because you're not paying for rent, for your shopping or any utilities, etc., etc. So obviously room and board seems like it's an easy pro, right? Let's discuss the cons when it comes to room and board. So Your room on the ship is not going to be like a passenger's room for the most part, or it's not going to be like a room you have at home. Of course, this depends on what your job is on the ship, but ideally you're going to have at least one roommate, maybe 2 or 3, depending on what your job is again, or where you live on the ship. The room is going to be a lot smaller. They're not kidding when they say when you take a shower, pretty much you're in this small box and you're just kind of pushing away the shower curtain every 2 seconds. The bathrooms are quite small. The rooms are quite small. It is what it is. Also, something to consider is when you're living on the ship, remember you're at sea and you're constantly moving. Your apartment at home, it's not tossing and turning like your bedroom on the ship might during a storm or during the winter months or the winter season. Especially if you're on a smaller ship, you may feel that rock more. And if it's during a storm, your room may kind of toss and turn. Though I will say on a normal day, it was definitely a pro. It kind of feels like the ship is rocking you to sleep, so it is quite comforting. Rolling along with this, when it comes to food, honestly, the crew food is nothing to get excited about. It is a lot of pasta and soups, sometimes pizza, and it sounds all well and good. It is not the best quality. It's not something that tastes the best or that you could always get excited for. Yes, y'all definitely have treats now and then, but in general, the crew mess is a little bit interesting. You don't get to pick what times you're gonna have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Obviously, the crew mess is open at specific hours, so you're gonna have to kind of acclimate your body to the times that you are able to eat. I will say there's been many a time where I walked in for lunch or for breakfast and saw the food and decided I'm just gonna grab an orange if that was available to me and head out, and hopefully the next meal there was something that was good to eat. If you are somebody who is very picky eater or likes to eat super healthy, again, you're probably gonna have to change your ways. You don't get to decide what you're gonna have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have a few options available to you and you choose one of them. I did mention earlier getting a chance to eat the food that the guests do. Depending on what your role is on the ship, if you are a staff member, you'll most likely get that opportunity to go at certain times when the guest buffet is open for you. If you are a crew member and you work in the galleys or the restaurants, you most likely will not get the opportunity, again, depending on what ship line you're working for. You also don't have any means to cook food for yourself. There usually is a small shop area on the ship in the crew section where you can go and buy things like cookies or cereal or soda, but there is no microwavable meals. You don't have access to a microwave in your room. You don't have access to a coffee maker in your room or anything that you can kind of work it out. You're also, for the most part on most ships, not supposed to take food out of the crew mess and bring it back to your room with you. Number 3, let's talk about lifestyle on the ship. So if you are looking into working on a ship, you've probably read all those articles about how the crew parties more than the guests do. And honestly, that's pretty much true. If you are the party type or laid back or chill lifestyle type person, ship life is definitely for you. If you're a minimalist, makes life so much easier on the ship. You'll be able to acclimate. It'll be comfortable and a great place for you to thrive. Now, I'm not just saying it's solely a party lifestyle. If you don't want to participate in that type of lifestyle, you don't have to attend crew parties or go to the crew bar. You can just go to the crew mess. You can go to the crew workout room. You can get something from the crew library, chill in your room. You don't have to be party 24/7, but if you are somebody looking for that lifestyle, then you've definitely found your place. For the most part, if you want to socialize, the crew bar is open very late and you pretty much just hang out in each other's cabins. It's really easy to make friends on the ship. There are usually activities going for crewmates, and sometimes you even get a chance to participate in guest activities as well. Now, a con with that is life on ships can get kind of boring if you are not someone who is social. It really does feel like every night is a Friday night, if that makes sense, and that there's nothing to do but kind of hang out in the crew bar. You'll find that when you work on ships, your world becomes very, very small. You have the crew mess, the crew bar, possibly the workout area, maybe a crew pool. You have different things that you have access to, but it's not always super exciting. Once you've been there once, you've kind of been there every other time. So if you're not a super social person, life can get boring really, really fast when you live on ships. I'm someone who gets bored really easily, and I found myself turning from all that social interaction to napping or reading in my room. The amount of books and movies that I've watched while on ships was insane. I remember at one point, I think it was every other night, we were going to someone's room to watch a movie as a group, and that was kind of our interactions for the day. So while life can get kind of boring, I would also put a note or a tip in there to find something that you like, bring your friends to it, and kind of make it your thing. Maybe you walk the flights of stairs, maybe you walk the Lido deck and that's kind of your way to exercise. Maybe you go to the crew gym, maybe you go to the crew bar for a few hours, maybe you have game night. Try to do your best to find ways where you can entertain yourself and not feel so bored or burnt out, because the more you feel burnt out, the more you feel bored, the more you question, is this really the lifestyle for you? And that can be hard sometimes. Number 4, let's talk about pay. A pro of pay is because pretty much everything is provided for you, you're saving the majority of your paycheck. You're kind of just paying for anything extra. And if you are on your first contract and you take a look at your paycheck and you're like, this really isn't much to save, one thing that's positive is, for the most part, monthly pay will go up when it comes to going on your second contract. Your first one usually is the lowest, and it can be pretty easy to work your way up if ships is something you want to do long term. So your paycheck will increase as you climb your way up the ladder and get a higher paying job. Another cool thing with pay is that on the ships that I worked at least, you pretty much had your employee card and it was connected to your paycheck. So when you bought like a glass of wine at the bar, you just swiped your employee card. You didn't have to worry about things like dealing with cash or withdrawing cash. There are ATMs on the ship if you do need to withdraw cash in order to use that when you get off the ship. For the most part, you can buy almost anything on the ship with your employee card, if that's the way your company works it. As I said earlier, it depends on what company or what ship you're on. But basically, it's connected right to your paycheck. And when you go to things like the guest gift shops in order to buy something, you probably most likely get an employee discount. So you do save a little bit of money on that end as well. Now, a con of this, first off, you don't get days off when you work on the ship, depending on what your contract is, depending on your position. So for the most part, you're working 7 days a week in order to make your salaried pay, or however much you make a month. Maybe you work the whole month and you get 1 day off. Maybe your job entitles you, you're off the morning and you work the evening. Maybe you work every morning and then one evening gets off. It completely differs the type of, and the amount of work you're doing in order to earn this pay. Now, whatever type of work you're doing, you're probably working a lot more hours than you would and getting paid less than you would if you put in hours at a land-based job and got a paycheck that way. Especially if you were someone who is an American, you take a look at your paycheck, it's going to be lower than you expect if you're going to work a regular job. Of course, keep in mind, yes, you're putting in a lot of hours, but room, board, food, flights, all of that is paid for you. Also, throughout this video, you probably noticed me saying, depending on your job. One other thing I didn't say, but should be put out there, is depending on where you come from. To explain it simply, essentially what they do is they look at the currency that you get paid in back home in your home country, and they kind of just like equal it out to how much you'd get in USD. I don't know how to explain it very well, but basically depending on where you come from, you may be getting paid a lot less than a friend that comes from the United States or Canada. Is it fair? No, but I will say a lot of my friends who work on ships, they work on ships because even with what looks like lower pay to us, when they go home, they really are making a great paycheck. People from other countries tend to work on ships because they make more money there than they would somewhere at home. But if you're an American or Canadian working on ships, it's going to be very different for you. You're going to take a look at your paycheck and you're going to realize you can make so much more working at home. However, if you're working on ships, you're probably not doing it for the paycheck. Category number 5 is you live on the ship. So what are the pros to actually physically living on the ship? Besides the fact that you don't have to pay for much, you pretty much have everything you need. You have a crew pool or a workout area, a crew bar, a mess, and you really don't have to go too far to get it. Everything is about a 5 to 10 minute walk depending on how big your ship is. It's not too far to get to your job. It's not too far to go get a snack in the crew mess. Everything you need is within close proximity. You're also living with all of these different people from absolutely everywhere. You're going to get a chance to learn new languages, improve on languages that you have a little bit of knowledge of. You get to learn about different cultures, make new friends. The friends you make are also living just a few doors down from you. So if you're bored, you can just go hang out or go see them. When you're living in the ship, for the most part, your views are always beautiful. The sunsets and the sunrises are absolutely breathtaking. The ship, sometimes it rocks you to sleep at night and it's super comforting. It also looks really good in a resume, the fact that you did interact with all these different people and with all these different cultures from around the world, that you weren't afraid to live on a ship and go out to sea. You have this whole experience that not a lot of people have that you can share, not only with others to make connections, but when you're in a job interview. Now, a con with actually living on the ship is, as I said before, you can get pretty stir crazy. If there's nothing to do but go to the bar, I found myself watching so many movies and reading so many books, I definitely got a little stir crazy. And if you're someone who's not really into getting off the ship too much, or you've been in the same contract for 10 months, you can go a little bit insane. Because in reality, while everything's in close proximity to you and you essentially have everything you need, it can get really boring. And that one thing that you found that was super exciting to do the first week you were there, you've been there, you've done that, you've seen it, you did it. It's not super exciting anymore. When I first started working on ships, I had a friend that would always tell me that I had big eyes and that she misses when she had big eyes. And at first I wasn't sure what she meant, but as time went on, I got it. When you first start working on ships, you're like, oh my gosh, wide-eyed, this is amazing. You're in awe. But as you get used to it, you're like, okay, this is a little bit less fun than I expected. So living on the ship can get boring. You can also get super seasick. And the smaller the ship you're on, the more seasick you're most likely going to get. My first contract, my work area was in the bow of the ship, the very front, and it was during the winter season. So the sea was very rocky. And if you don't know, if you're in the bow, that is the most topsy-turvy place on the ship that you're going to get the most seasick. I worked in the kids area. Not only were we calling parents to pick up their child because their child got seasick, roping off that area, calling people to come clean it at least once or twice a day for a good solid month, but we were also taking turns running back and forth to the restroom to essentially throw up because of how seasick we were. Another kind of funny con I'm just going to throw in here is that because you live on the ship, the question that the guests ask all the time is, do you live on the ship? And to you, you're like, it's a no-brainer. Yes, I live on the ship. Like, I don't row to work every day. But they don't know that because they don't see the crew areas. So it's a fair enough question, but it does kind of become frustrating to have to answer and respond to that question at least 50 times a day. So there you have it. Those are my 5 categories along with the pros and cons to both living and working on cruise ships. If you are someone who is currently working on ships or who has worked on ships in the past and you agree with something or disagree with something I said or have something to add, please feel free to put it down in the comments below. If you would find it helpful for me to dive deeper into any of these topics or make a different video on one, please let me know in the comments below. And if you are looking or applying to working on ships, then good luck. I hope you have an amazing contract, a great experience. And until next time, I hope this helps.